Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to be talking about this book,
Okay.
The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin.
Cool.
And it's not your typical kind of how to be more creative book. It's kind of like Rick Rubin.
Right.
Sat down with the universe
Yeah.
and had a deep conversation about what creativity is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what really struck me was how Rubin dismantles this idea that
Yeah.
creativity is just for certain people,
Mm.
like, artists or musicians.
Right.
He brings in these crazy examples like the Golden Gate Bridge, the White Album, even a Phillips screwdriver.
Okay, I got to admit, when I first read that, I was like, red screwdriver? Really? But then it clicked. It's like he's making us look at the creativity in these everyday things that we just take for granted.
Exactly. And he pushes it even further. He says that each of us is like a translator for the universe's creative energy.
Wow.
That we're all, capable of channeling this incredible force. But the way we do it, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
He introduces this idea of the source, the vessel, and the filter.
Okay, so let's break this down.
Right.
So the source is like this infinite well of creative potential.
Yeah.
And then we have our own filter,
Yeah.
which kind of shapes how we see and interact with that potential.
I love that. And once we've filtered that creative energy from the source, it goes into our vessel, which is like a container for all of our experiences,
Right.
our thoughts, our emotions, all the raw material that we work with.
So the catch is that we're not stuck with the filter
Exactly.
that we have. We can actually train ourselves to kind of change the way we see things and expand the capacity of our vessel.
Absolutely. And he even goes on to say that some of the greatest artists, creators out there actually developed incredible sensitivity as a form of self-protection.
Interesting.
That by feeling things so intensely, they were able to tap into a deeper well of creativity.
It makes you wonder if people who are creating incredible things are just more in tune with the world around them.
Absolutely.
More open to those experiences.
That's a fascinating question, and it's one Rubin encourages us to explore.
Yeah.
He thinks that we can cultivate that sensitivity and openness through consciously engaging with the world's creative masterpieces.
So you're saying that by immersing ourselves in great works of art,
yes,
whether that's music or literature, even architecture, that can actually help us become more creative.
It's like those masterpieces are like tuning forks.
Okay.
They vibrate at a higher frequency. And it helps us calibrate our own creative senses.
So they kind of set the bar, and then we strive towards that.
And Rubin especially highlights nature.
Okay.
Saying that being in nature helps us feel connected to something much larger than ourselves. It kind of breaks down that feeling of separation that can limit our creativity.
I know for me, like sometimes going for a walk in the woods
clears
my head way more than any brainstorming session could ever do.
Absolutely. Speaking of clearing our heads and getting inspired.
Yeah.
I've recently discovered this amazing YouTube channel called Affirmify Journey.
Oh, cool.
It's full of motivational content.
Awesome.
It's perfect for when you need like a little boost.
I love it.
And it's funny you mentioned clearing our heads.
Yeah.
Because Rubin stresses that we need to be aware that nothing is static.
Yeah.
The world is constantly changing.
Right.
And we are too. So that means there's always something new to discover, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
So it's not just about filling our creative vessel, but also understanding that it's constantly being reshaped and refilled.
Exactly.
That it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. And that process also involves tapping into the power of our subconscious mind.
Okay.
Which Rubin sees as a treasure trove of creative material. He suggests techniques like free writing and dream journaling to get to those hidden depths.
I've dabbled in dream journaling, and it's amazing what comes up.
I know, it's incredible.
When you actually start paying attention to those nighttime narratives.
It's like our subconscious is working on creative problems, even when we're asleep.
It really is. And Rubin even mentions that some artists have produced some of their most groundbreaking work while in a trance-like state.
Yes.
On the verge of sleep, or even in those fever dreams.
Exactly.
It makes me think about those classic shower thoughts.
Right.
Maybe there's something to those
absolutely
relaxed, almost meditative states that unlocks a different kind of creative flow.
That definitely challenges this idea that we always need to be laser focused, disciplined to be creative.
Right.
Maybe sometimes it's about letting go and allowing those unexpected flashes of insight to bubble up.
Which makes me wonder, what does Rubin say about creating the right environment for those insights to come out?
Well, he doesn't advocate for any one setting or place.
Okay.
It's about figuring out what works best for you.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a quiet, isolated space, like a cabin in the woods, or a busy environment that sparks your energy.
I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely have certain places where I feel more creatively charged.
It's so interesting how both of those extremes can be beneficial depending on what you're trying to achieve.
It's almost like saying there's no one size fits all.
Exactly.
You got to find that sweet spot.
And speaking of those moments when maybe our creativity feels a bit blocked.
Yeah.
You know, self-doubt creeps in, that inner critic whispers in our ear.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Rubin offers some really powerful strategies for dealing with those insecurities.
Let's hear it.
One thing he really stresses is lowering the stakes. We often put so much pressure on ourselves to create this perfect, groundbreaking thing that it paralyzes us before we even begin.
Yeah, that's true.
He suggests approaching creativity with a sense of playfulness.
Okay.
Not taking ourselves too seriously.
So giving ourselves permission to experiment.
Exactly.
To make mistakes.
Right.
To have fun along the way.
That's the key. And recognizing that not every creative endeavor has to be this masterpiece.
Right.
Sometimes those valuable lessons come from those so-called failures, you know, when we try something new and it doesn't quite work out the way we planned.
And sometimes those quote-unquote mistakes lead to these incredible breakthroughs.
Absolutely.
That wouldn't have happened if we stuck to the safe path.
And this reminds me something Rubin says that really stuck with me. Embracing imperfection.
Yeah.
He brings up the Japanese art of kintsugi.
I've heard of that.
Where broken pottery is repaired with gold.
Yeah.
Highlighting those cracks.
Wow.
Instead of trying to hide them.
That's such beautiful imagery.
It's like our flaws and imperfections are not something to be ashamed of, but something to be embraced and even celebrated.
It makes it more unique.
Exactly. And he applies that to the creative process too.
Right.
Encouraging us to see the beauty in those unexpected turns.
Yeah.
Those moments when maybe our work doesn't meet our initial expectations.
Because sometimes those so-called imperfections are what give it character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it feel more human.
Make it feel more real.
Exactly.
And speaking of connecting with others, Rubin dives into this fascinating world of collaboration.
Right.
And he sees it as much more than just working with other people.
It's so true.
It's this dialogue between different parts of ourselves.
It's like recognizing that we're not just one unified self, but a collection of all these different voices, different perspectives, all competing for attention.
Yeah.
And the creative process is finding a way to harmonize those voices.
Oh, well.
And let them all contribute to the final product.
It's almost like having this internal brainstorming session.
Exactly.
With all those different parts of ourselves.
And then, of course, there's collaborating with other people.
Right.
Which can be both exhilarating and challenging.
It can be.
And Rubin highlights this important point.
Okay.
That the artist's interpretation and the audience's experience can be totally different.
Yeah.
And both are valid.
That's a good point.
It's not about dictating how someone should feel about our work,
right,
but more about letting go and trusting that it will resonate in its own unique way.
Exactly. It's like letting go of that attachment to a specific outcome.
Yes.
And trusting that it'll spark something in someone.
It's about embracing the multitude of perspectives that enrich the creative landscape.
And I think this is a great place for us to pause for now.
Yeah.
Let our listeners absorb all of these insightful ideas from Rick Rubin.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part, exploring Rubin's unique perspective on the nature of creativity, the source of creative energy, and the importance of embracing imperfection and collaboration.
For sure. But there's so much more to uncover. So be sure to join us for part 2 of our deep dive into the creative act, a way of being. Welcome back to our deep dive into Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. We left off talking about the magic of collaboration, both within ourselves and with others. And now Rubin takes it a step further and kind of challenges us to question those so-called rules of creativity.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating is how he doesn't see rules as inherently restrictive.
Okay.
Like, he actually suggests that temporary rules, what he calls constraints, can actually be like catalysts for innovation.
So it's almost like setting up these boundaries to push against.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in creative writing prompts, it's a write a story in exactly 6 words.
Right.
Or write a song without using the letter E. It seems counterintuitive, but those limitations can actually
Yeah.
spark something new.
Exactly. That's exactly it. He uses those surprising examples to show how limitations can liberate us.
Yeah.
He even talks about Georges Perec's novel that was written entirely without the letter E,
Wow.
and Yves Klein's paintings.
Oh, yeah.
Where he only used his signature shade of blue.
Right.
So these artists, they set up these constraints and they ended up creating something truly groundbreaking.
It's almost like they're hacking their own creativity.
Exactly.
By forcing themselves to think outside the box.
And Rubin highlights how even like established artists can benefit from this.
Right.
It's a way to shake things up, to break free from those ingrained habits and patterns, and to kind of rediscover that sense of playfulness and experimentation.
So even if you're like a seasoned painter or a veteran musician, you can still benefit from imposing some of these constraints.
Absolutely. It's like giving your creativity a jump start by switching things up.
And he points to Lars von Trier's Dog Me 95 filmmaking manifesto, which had all these rules.
Yeah, a whole set of rules.
That were designed to strip away artifice and force filmmakers to focus on this raw, authentic storytelling.
Exactly.
And I remember that movement. It led to some really powerful and innovative films, like this Celebration.
Yeah.
But as helpful as constraints can be, we've all had those moments where the creative well feels dry, like we've hit a wall.
Yeah.
What does Rubin suggest for those times when the creative juice just isn't flowing?
Well, one of his key strategies is changing our perspective.
Okay.
It's easy to get so close to our work that we lose objectivity. We get stuck in a rut.
Right.
He suggests some really interesting and even playful techniques for getting unstuck.
Like what?
For musicians, he recommends cranking up the volume in your headphones so loud that you're forced to play softer.
Wow.
He says it often leads to a more delicate and nuanced performance.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like tricking your creative mind into trying something new by changing the physical environment.
Right. It's like forcing yourself into a corner and seeing what happens.
He also suggests shifting the emotional context.
Okay.
So imagine you're playing that same song, but this time is the last time you'll ever play it.
Oh, wow.
Or picture an audience, even just one person, and see how that changes the energy.
I can see how those mental shifts could really impact what you create.
He also recommends changing the backstory, the context, even the emotional tone of a piece, and seeing what happens.
Wow, so it's not just about looking at the work differently, but also changing how we think about it.
Exactly. It's about experimenting with all these different lenses to view your creation.
Now, another key element Rubin emphasizes is the importance of feedback, but not for validation.
No.
He sees it as a tool for broadening our own perception and uncovering these hidden aspects of our work.
Yeah, but that's a tricky one.
It is.
Because feedback can be so subjective, and it's easy to get caught up in other people's opinions, especially when it's something we've poured our heart into.
100%.
And Rubin has a great point about this. He says, listen to understand the person giving the feedback, not necessarily the work itself.
That's interesting. So it's less about taking the feedback as gospel and more about understanding their perspective.
Exactly. Their feedback might reveal more about their own tastes and preferences than about the actual quality of your work.
So it's about taking what's helpful and leaving the rest.
And also recognizing that if your work is truly innovative, it's probably going to polarize people.
Makes sense.
He actually sees that polarization as a positive sign.
Okay.
It means you're pushing boundaries and challenging conventions.
Right.
Which is often a sign that you're onto something truly unique and original.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off.
It does.
Needing everyone to love what you create. It's more about staying true to your vision.
Yeah.
Even if it means not everyone's going to get it.
And that brings us to another crucial step in this creative journey.
Yeah.
Letting go and sharing our work with the world.
Which can be terrifying.
It can be for a lot of creatives.
Especially when you've put so much of yourself into something.
Absolutely. And I think that fear of judgment is something every artist, every writer, every creator has experienced.
At some point.
So how do we navigate that fear?
Yeah. What does Rubin say?
Well, he encourages a shift in focus from perfection to self-expression, to remember that each creation is just a snapshot of who we are in that moment. And that it's more about the journey, the process, than achieving some preconceived notion of perfection.
It's about recognizing that creativity is an ongoing process. And that each piece we create is just a marker along that path. Exactly.
And to be truly free in that process, you got to let go of the need to control the outcome.
Absolutely. We have to trust
Yeah.
that our work will find its audience.
Right.
That it will resonate with those who are meant to experience it.
Even if it's not everyone.
And that brings us to another really crucial point.
Okay.
Defining success on our own terms.
So it's not about chasing external validation or seeking fame or fortune.
Right.
But about staying true to our own creative vision and finding fulfillment in the act of creation itself.
He reminds us that those external measures of success,
Right.
they're fleeting and unpredictable.
Yeah, what's considered brilliant today might be forgotten tomorrow.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
So it's about finding that internal compass,
Right.
that inner sense of satisfaction that comes from creating something authentic and meaningful to us, regardless of what the outside world might think.
And you know, this ties into a concept that Rubin introduces that really resonated with me. He calls it connected detachment.
Now that sounds paradoxical.
It does.
How can we be both connected and detached at the same time?
Yeah.
Well, he describes it as being fully immersed in the creative process, giving it our full attention and energy, but simultaneously detaching from the outcome.
So it's like being present in the moment.
Yeah.
Enjoying the ride.
Yes.
But not getting fixated on a specific destination.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we can't control everything.
Yeah.
And that sometimes those most interesting discoveries happen when we allow ourselves to be surprised by where the creative journey takes us.
It's like trusting the process and being open to those unexpected twists and turns.
Absolutely. And speaking of breakthroughs,
Yeah.
Rubin also dives into those moments of pure joy and revelation that fuel our creative work, what he calls the ecstatic experience.
Those are the moments we live for as creators.
They are those flashes of insight, that feeling of flow and connection that makes all the hard work and self-doubt worth it.
And he encourages us to pay attention to those energetic shifts in our bodies.
In our bodies.
Recognize the signs that we're entering that ecstatic state.
Right.
And to follow those paths that lead us toward those moments of heightened awareness and creative flow.
So it's not just waiting for inspiration to strike. It's actively seeking out those experiences that make us feel alive and energized.
It's recognizing that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Yes.
At any time.
If we're receptive to it.
And speaking of being receptive,
right.
Rubin also challenges us to expand our point of reference.
Yeah.
To be open to new and unfamiliar experiences that might initially feel strange or unsettling.
He makes this great point that when we encounter something truly new and different, our first instinct is often rejection.
That's true.
We don't have the context to understand it, so we push it away.
Right.
But if we give it time, if we expose ourselves to it repeatedly, we might find ourselves developing a newfound appreciation.
That's happened to me with music or art.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, what is this? And then I come back to it and I'm like,
and you're like,
oh, wow, there's so much here.
Exactly. He encourages us to apply that same principle to our own work, those creative impulses that might initially feel strange or unsettling.
It's about trusting our intuition even when it leads us in unexpected directions.
Exactly. And being open to the possibility that what feels strange and unfamiliar today might become our next creative breakthrough.
And speaking of breakthroughs, Rubin also talks about self-competition as a powerful tool for growth.
Yeah, I think a lot of creatives struggle with that idea of competition. It feels counterproductive to the collaborative spirit that drives a lot of creative work.
Exactly.
But he's not talking about comparing ourselves to others or trying to be better than anyone else.
Right.
It's about using our own past work as a benchmark to springboard for pushing ourselves further, for expanding our creative boundaries and challenging ourselves to create something new and different.
Each time we step up to the plate.
It's about embracing that process of continual evolution.
And speaking of reflecting our current state of being,
Yeah.
Rubin also encourages us to distill our work to its essence, to strip away any unnecessary elements that might be obscuring the core of our creation.
So finding that balance between complexity and simplicity, richness of detail and clarity of expression.
He suggests trying to remove as much as possible from a piece
Yeah.
without losing its integrity.
Yeah.
Seeing how much you can strip away
Right.
before it loses its essential meaning.
And he believes that process
Yeah.
can lead to really surprising discoveries.
It's like that classic writing advice.
Yeah.
Kill your darlings.
Yeah, kill your darlings.
Sometimes those precious details we cling to,
Right.
they're actually cluttering up the canvas.
Ex-
And, speaking of uncovering hidden power,
Yeah.
Rubin celebrates the magic of mistakes, seeing them as opportunities for unexpected discoveries and creative breakthroughs.
And I think that's a hard one.
It is.
For a lot of creatives to grasp.
Because we tend to be such perfectionists.
Exactly. So mistakes feel like failures.
Right.
But he challenges us to reframe those so-called mistakes as gifts from our subconscious mind.
Interesting.
Opportunities to break free from those ingrained patterns and discover new solutions we might not have considered otherwise.
So it's about embracing the unknown, trusting that even when we stumble, we're still moving forward.
Absolutely. This has been an incredible exploration of some of these key concepts in the Creative Act.
Yeah, it feels like he's giving us a whole new vocabulary for thinking about and engaging with our creative process.
He's definitely challenging those conventional notions of creativity and offering a fresh perspective on what it means to be a creator in the world.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. We've been unpacking so much about how to tap into that creative energy and deal with self-doubt, and even how mistakes can lead to breakthroughs.
And building on that idea of creative breakthroughs, I think it's important to highlight what Rubin says about the role of energy throughout the whole creative process.
Right.
It's not just about having that initial burst of inspiration and then coasting to the finish line.
Right, it's more like a wave.
Exactly. It ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
There are moments where you're riding high on inspiration, and then there are times where you're slogging through the mud, wondering if you'll ever have another good idea again.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's where Rubin really emphasizes the importance of paying attention to what truly excites us.
Okay.
What makes us lose track of time and forget about the world outside of our creative bubble. He believes that those are the signs that we're on the right path, that we're tapping into that deeper creative energy.
So even when it's hard, even when we're feeling stuck, if there's still that spark of excitement, that passion for what we're creating, that's a sign to keep going.
That's what Rubin seems to be suggesting. And he also highlights the importance of discipline and routine in maintaining that creative energy, even when it's not flowing as freely as we'd like.
This is where that paradox comes in, right? That structure and routine can actually lead to more creative freedom.
Yeah.
It makes me think of all those artists and writers who swear by those daily rituals.
Right.
Whether it's meditating or going for a walk or even just sitting down at their desk at the same time every day.
It's like creating a container for that creative energy.
Yeah.
A structure that supports the process even when inspiration isn't striking.
And speaking of structure and flow, Rubin also emphasizes the cyclical nature of the creative process.
Right, that importance of completing projects and letting them go, creating space for new beginnings, for new creative impulses to emerge.
It can be so hard to finish a project, especially when you've poured so much of yourself into it.
I know.
But there's also something really liberating about letting go.
Yeah.
Releasing it into the world and trusting that it'll find its own path.
And that act of letting go can be so powerful.
Yeah.
It creates that vacuum for new creative energy to rush in, new ideas to take root and flourish.
It's like clearing out the clutter to make space for something new.
And this brings up another really important element that Rubin highlights. The role of playfulness. In the creative process. He reminds us that creativity isn't just hard work and discipline. It's also about joy and delight. About rediscovering that childlike sense of wonder and experimentation that we often lose as adults.
It's so easy to get serious and forget to have fun.
Exactly. And Rubin really encourages us to approach our work with that lightness, with curiosity, to allow ourselves to be surprised and delighted by what emerges, even if it's not what we planned.
It's about embracing those happy accidents, those unexpected turns that lead to those exciting discoveries.
Absolutely. And he emphasizes that this openness to surprise, this willingness to embrace the unknown, is essential for navigating the creative process.
So trusting the journey even when we don't have a map.
Yes. And being willing to step outside our comfort zones to explore those uncharted territories where creative breakthroughs often lie hidden.
Exactly. And speaking of uncharted territories,
Yeah.
Rubin challenges us to expand our worldview, to seek out experiences and perspectives that are different from our own.
Right. And he believes that that's key for keeping our creative energy fresh.
Makes sense.
He reminds us that when we encounter something new for the first time, our initial reaction is often resistance or even rejection.
Like when you hear a new genre of music for the first time.
Exactly. It might sound strange or dissonant, but if you give it a chance, if you listen with an open mind, you might discover all these new layers of beauty and complexity that you never would have imagined.
Right. And Rubin encourages us to apply that same principle to our own work.
Yeah.
To those creative impulses that might initially feel strange or unsettling.
It's about trusting our intuition and allowing ourselves to explore those uncharted territories within our own creative landscape.
So having the courage to follow those creative threads that spark our curiosity, even if they lead us in directions that we didn't expect.
And that brings us to another important aspect that Rubin highlights.
Okay.
The role of sincerity in the creative process.
You can't force sincerity, though.
Right. And Rubin makes the point that sincerity is a byproduct, not a goal.
Okay.
It emerges naturally when we create from a place of authenticity and vulnerability.
It has to come from within.
Exactly. It's not about trying to create something that will please others or fit into some preconceived notion of what's considered sincere.
Right. It's about being true to ourselves and letting our own unique voice emerge.
And he reminds us that those imperfections, those quirks and contradictions that make us who we are often what make our work feel most real and relatable.
It's about embracing our humanness.
Yeah, in all its messy glory.
And allowing that to inform our creative expression.
Absolutely. And, speaking of enriching our creative expression, Rubin also talks about the importance of recognizing and honoring those natural rhythms, those patterns that exist both within us and in the world around us.
It's like that sense of harmony and balance that we see reflected in nature.
Exactly. In the proportions of the human body, in the cycles of day and night, in the changing seasons.
And he's suggesting that by attuning ourselves to those rhythms, by being more aware of that natural flow of energy, that can help us tap into a deeper creative source and create work that resonates.
And ultimately, Rubin reminds us that the creative process itself is a mystery.
Right.
It's a force that we can't fully explain or analyze.
You just have to trust it.
Exactly. It's about surrendering to the unknown and trusting that intuitive spark that guides us along the way.
And finally, he emphasizes the importance of protecting our creative space from those distractions and expectations of the outside world.
As our work gains more visibility,
Right.
it's easy to get caught up in the opinions of others, to lose sight of our own inner compass and start creating to please them instead of staying true to our own vision.
Absolutely. So create those boundaries.
Yeah.
Cultivate those practices that help you stay grounded and centered and trust that inner voice that guides you toward those creative endeavors that feel most authentic and fulfilling.
And so, to wrap things up, Rick Rubin's The Creative Act isn't just a book about creativity. It's an invitation to a new way of being in the world.
It's about embracing the unknown, trusting our intuition, and finding that joy in the process of creation.
Whatever form that may take.
And for those of you looking to further expand your creative toolbox, I highly recommend checking out lingopediamagazine.com.
Well, that's a great resource.
They have a fantastic selection of courses and ebooks on all sorts of creative topics. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, share this deep dive with your fellow creators, and leave us a like if you found it insightful. Until next time, keep creating.